there's too much financial activities going on, such that finance is not serving the real economy, but in fact it is overtaking the real economy and whipsawing it. And I think a lot of economists now call this financialization. Instead of finance, we're talking about financialization, where all the activities are packaged into financial transactions to benefit basically the financial sector. In fact, a recent last year's one study by the IMF shows that finance, serves the real economy up to a point where it's credit given to the private sector. If it's up to about 100% of GDP, I think it's good and positive. It serves the real economy. But beyond that, the marginal cost of having more finance exceeds the marginal benefits. So that instead of then contributing to economic growth, it can lead to less economic growth. And there are two reasons why this happens. First is because when you have so much financial speculation and activities, it destabilizes both the financial sector and the real economic sector. And hence, you have periods of build-up of growth followed by huge crashes, and that takes a long time to come back, to build it up. So that's volatility and fragility. And the second is because then finance sucks in too much human talents and other kind of resources, so it misallocates things. Which means basically, to make the solution short and sweet is that we have to regulate finance. We have to make it simple and boring rather than sexy and complicated. And they want the banks, especially the World Bank, to be what they call the knowledge banks, where it's a non-funding bank. They basically give you some ideas and throw you out to the lions in the private sector. And I think we have to move away from that. And hopefully, the new types of development banks and long-term credit banks that are the initiatives of the regional bodies should move back to more basic and long-term lending without this kind of neoliberal baggage. Then the second reason for the crisis is there's too much inequality between the rich and the poor. And that's because much of the growth in GDP has been accruing to capital, and the amount of GDP going to labor and wages is declining. And that's happening to maybe 70–80% of the countries, both in the rich countries as well as in the poor countries. And what implications does this have for financial crisis? That's basically, if you have the majority of the population not being able to have demand because their wages are falling, then there's only one other solution. That is, if they want to have to consume, then you have to give them a lot of debt and loans. On the flip side, those people who are having, a small, tiny minority of people, about 1% or 2 or 5% of the population, they have so much of the excess wealth, and they have basically all these savings have to be quote unquote utilized. And the way they do it is to invest in speculative financial transactions and activities, which give them super profits. And there you have a build-up of the asset bubble. And the long and short of the story means if you want to create a more stable economy, then you have to have a more equitable distribution of wealth.